The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on UnitedWeDrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I am alone. I am not joined by my typical two co-hosts, Phil Palmisano and Joel Codner. My internet was out when trying to record this episode, so I wasn't able to join in on the fun. But we do have an episode for you. Phil and Joel were joined for our very first interview or discussion with an outside guest on the show. And we brought aboard a really great guest to be our first guest. This person was actually our very first guest on the initial run of the show, way back in the day. His life has changed greatly in the beer industry, just like ours has. And it is our good friend, Sean Nordquist, who is the executive director of the Florida Brewers Guild right here in Florida. Joel and Phil sit down with Sean via Zoom and talk with him about the state of Florida beer. It's a great discussion. I really wish I could have been involved in it. We'll get together sometime in the future and talk about beer. But why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy a conversation with Sean Nordquist, Executive Director of the Florida Brewers Guild.
All right, guys, it's time. We hinted at this for the longest time in the world. We always wanted to bring in a fourth voice, but tonight we can't because Mike somehow doesn't have internet, or AT&T didn't show up to his house. But we are joined today by the executive director of the Florida Brewers Guild, Sean Nordquist. Sean, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, it's great to be back as the best guest of the year. I think this is the best guest of the year review show, isn't it?
It depends on who you talk to. If you're talking to Tom Barris, he might have an issue with that one. But
is that guy still around? I don't know. I haven't.
I heard all he's doing is slinging import beer. So it is what it is.
In Espanol.
In Espanol, exactly. I'm sort of jealous. He does get some really nice trips out of that gig, though.
And in all fairness, the beer he is selling is really good.
It is. It 100%.
Because I know you guys have talked about the NA beer before, and Galatia actually makes a really good. Their 0.0 beer is really good. So
I'll put it on my list.
You should.
Joel,
yeah.
You're honestly, you're talking to probably the two best people when it comes to seltzers or 0.0 beer. Joel and I are the most open-minded individuals on this podcast. Mike is really closed-minded, and it's fun because he's not here to even debate against that.
Right.
So but we are joined by Sean. Sean, thank you so much for coming in. Joel, how are you doing this evening?
I'm holding up all right. Thank you for asking. I was just going to ask what you guys are drinking. I'm full of seltzer and this platter of nachos I made, so the only thing I brought for the show is a little taster bottle of Malort as usual.
Oh, God. So I actually have, it's called Pub Ale. It's from Flying Butt Brewing. It's an English mild, and it's really delicious and, mid 4%, and reminds me of sitting in a soccer and with the boys, and just it's just a really, really good beer.
Yeah, I had that a few months back when I went to drop off. They were the drop off location for Best Florida Beer entries. I took a trip up there with my wife that day. We just went up and back, and really great beers.
Yeah, and it's exactly 1 mile walking from my house, so that's really
nice.
I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah.
sort of dangerous for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but a mile is a long way for me to walk anyway. So
It's good. You work off some of that English mild as you're
exactly,
walking back and forth.
exactly.
I think their smallest pour too is like 16 ounces. So
Well, in some of their higher ABV ones, they do the shorter pour. They're responsible in their serving.
I'm drinking a Distill Brewery Driving That Hazy IPA. Really cool can artwork.
Yeah.
Always about the beard and the bandana. So, but we're not here to talk about what we're here to drink or what we're drinking tonight. Sean, how's everything going? And that's sort of a loaded question as we're interviewing you in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, everything's fine. Why do you ask? No, it's I will say, I've been in the position now for 3 years as director of the guild, and of course involved with the industry for the past decade or whatever. It has been, there's that old proverb of "May you live in interesting times," which is actually supposed to be a curse. I would say the past couple months have been some of the most interesting that I've seen in the industry. On one hand, it's devastating because I know what my friends and colleagues and stuff are going through, business wise and financially, and then of course that translates to what's happening in their personal life and at home, and it expands to everything else. On the other side, we've seen some really creative and encouraging approaches for different different breweries when it's okay, well, you can't open, and then they really gather. Okay, well, can we do curbside? Which I would say 99% of the breweries, if not all, if you'd ask them in January, have you ever thought about curbside pickup for to go for beer? They would have looked at you like you were crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why would I even think about that? Or have you ever considered making hand sanitizer? Like, what? Like, what? Why would I do that? And and then coming up with just different creative ways to maintain revenue stream, to keep people employed, to keep people getting paychecks has been it's been encouraging to see how all the different ways and things people are willing to do to for their employees and for their business. But it's tough. It's we don't know how long this is going to last for. We don't know if we're going to see another spike and have things get worse again. And we just there's still so much we don't know about about the COVID-19 itself that we're only a few months into even knowing of its existence, let alone any long-term effects or anything like that. So I think it's also been interesting to see the relationships between breweries and their communities and their vendors and their suppliers and all that. And a lot of the suppliers of raw materials, hops and grain and have stepped to say, hey, let's do something to help raise money for first responders, let's do it for healthcare workers, and we'll give you the grain for free, or we'll give it to you at cost, or let's look at our some of the landlords talking to these, especially these smaller breweries, let's look at your lease because we know that revenue is going to be low or even non-existent over the next few months. So let's talk about a way that we can work together on that. And then of course, as always, breweries helping each other out, saying if you need any help with this, you need help. But it's that's only it's not sustainable forever. And as far as I know, we haven't seen any breweries close because of COVID-19 yet. I think it would be naive to assume that it's not going to happen. But the fact that it hasn't happened yet is actually really encouraging. I honestly, I was really expecting to see, at least a handful, at least talk about closing their doors entirely within the first month.
And really the only casualty that we had in the state of Florida was bankruptcy filing, correct?
Yeah, and now a lot of that happens behind closed doors, and we don't know for sure what and also I think that one was already in the works.
Gotcha.
I think this was probably the final straw. But yeah, I mean, the people are doing what they need to do to keep going, And there's lots and lots of people in our industry, friends of ours who are out of work, and it's not like, all right, well, I'll just go get another job somewhere else. Like, yeah, because nobody's hiring because people are laying off 20, 30, 40 people at a time. And not to mention all the other stuff that goes with that, with the unable to get unemployment, unable to get the payroll protection, all those kinds of things. That's a whole other topic about politics for another day, perhaps.
Yeah, different podcast. We're here
exactly.
more beverage industry
Right.
than anything else. We can talk beverage politics.
We can talk about that in a minute. One of that was actually pretty cool is that a lot of breweries that I've seen, they had plans for throughout the year, like we're going to do this release, or we've been sitting on this. People are like, all right, well, since we're doing, we're not brewing a whole lot right now because we don't know what to keep on. We're going to start releasing stuff. Like we've got this thing, we were talking about releasing this, I don't know, maybe 3 months down the line. Let's put it out there. And so doing special releases, and they're not, we're not talking Hunabut Day level bottle release stuff, but like, hey, we've got this cool, this variation on one of our other things. We're going to put that out there, in crowlers, come get them. And crowler sales have been going nuts for breweries that are doing crowlers, and people saying, all right, well, I'm thinking long term, I'm going to brew an old ale and I'm going to put it in barrels and probably look at it again in December, or people, for those of us that like the lagers, saying, all right, I'm going to start doing some lagers and let that, sit for a while, but everybody having to really adjust on the fly. From outside of things, it's been interesting.
And to touch on something you mentioned in the beginning of all that, I feel like with the vendors and a lot of the companies that breweries work with, it feels like we got a glimpse of that generosity and hospitality and coming together last year with the hurricane that affected the Bahamas. I remember seeing a lot of, local Florida collaborations and working with grain providers, hop providers, stuff like that to brew those benefit beers because, we knew damn well that very well could have been us, that hurricane. So it was great to see, and now it's all of us, every single one of us are affected. So, it's great to hear that, the spirit of craft beer and collaborating and coming together and working together is bigger than ever. I did have a question, before all this craziness went down, what would you say, was the guild's kind of focus and priority this year, and how has that changed now that we're in the middle of all this madness?
I would say that the focus hasn't changed. If anything, it's been thrown into sharp relief. The issues of free market franchise and self-distribution will always be. And again, depending on which brewery you talk to, one is more important than the other. And because everyone has a different business model. So for let's say Cigar City, self-distribution is probably not high on their list of priorities. But for a small guy who doesn't have a distribution contract and is only doing 500 barrels a year, who no distributor would even look at because it doesn't make sense for them, he has no options. So for him, franchise reform is irrelevant because he just wants to be able to get his beer out to his local community. So those two items will always be at the top of the list in some form or fashion. We've had really good conversations with representatives from the distributors, and they're, I think they recognize that working together to get something done that is acceptable to both parties is in their interest, because it's going to happen one way or the other. And if they don't want to play, if they don't want to be a part of it, they likely will really not like what comes out of it. Like, there was a version of a bill that went up this year that ended up dying in committee, but it basically said you can get out of any contract at any time with no compensation with, I don't know, it was 90 or 100, 120 days notice, as long as you're a brewery under 65,000 barrels, which is nearly everybody in Florida. And it's and the part that really scares them is the no compensation, because especially if for some of the smaller ones, it's more of an ego thing, I think, than anything. But some of these larger breweries that aren't 65,000, that are maybe 20, 30,000, if they can just up and leave one of the distributors, that's a big chunk of change, and it's also it'd be a big hit against their books, because basically when they take on a brewery as a client, that counts as an asset. It's an X amount of dollars that sits on their balance sheet that they can use for their own loans and lines of credit and all that kind of stuff. So those, and I think those will always be topics that are that are at the top of the list for the guild, as far as on the business side goes. We're also looking at ways we can lower the impact on breweries, whether it's permitting fees or taxes or stuff like that. It's not really a hard sell. It's just a matter of the political will to do it. Nobody's saying, oh no, breweries don't pay enough taxes as it is. Nobody's saying that. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. Permitting fees, the amount of money that comes into the state from brewery permits is negligible in the large scheme of things. So I think that if getting those lowered for where cutting $3,000 to $1,500, the state wouldn't even notice, but it makes a big difference to a small brewery. So those are things that are that I think are definitely achievable. And then we're always looking at things about education, better business practices, and you guys have talked about it a number of times on your podcast before. But the mental health issues and mental wellness has been something that's important to me since I started, and we actually now have a mental wellness committee that we've formed for the guild, and we have the committee is working on looking at things that the guild can do and offer. We are not mental health providers, and we're not aiming to be. But if we can provide resources or access to resources, or even if it's just, I started with putting up a resource page with links and phone numbers, and then we've got one of our new board members, Jillian Lynch from Levin Brewing, is doing a Mental Wellness Monday post on Instagram and Facebook, and it's just like here's we all know that we love beer and brewing, but what's something else you do in your life that makes you happy? And so she's actually getting somebody from different breweries around the state to have a picture of one of them or one of their employees doing something that they love, that that gives them that that feeling of happiness and that feeling of mental wellness in what can otherwise be a stressful and and dark place for a lot of people.
How's the feedback on that program in particular? That was something the three of us talked about. It was either pre-show, post-show, maybe it was like mentioned slowly within the episode, but we were really excited to see the Florida Brewers Guild take a stance in regards to mental health and these mental health Mondays. All three of us are very excited to see it. Are you receiving similar feedback from other breweries throughout the state?
Yes, and not only other breweries at the state, but actually other state guilds as well. In fact, South Carolina,
that's awesome,
just announced that they're doing something similar. And so we had a big call with a lot of the other guild leaders throughout the country, and a lot of people are saying, "Yeah, tell me what you're doing," because it's something that we want to address as well. And for me, it was it's been a long time coming. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And finally, and this of course is all before COVID-19 started, but we had up through the end of, I want to say it was in the first 2 months, maybe the first 3 months of the year, we had 4 people in our industry take their own lives. And I was just every time I see something like that happen, it's devastating. It's a gut punch. Even if I didn't know them personally or didn't know them well, it's like every time, and they're all younger than I am, and they're all it's just like this. This shouldn't be happening. And I was like, all right, I'm in a position where I can do something about it. I'm not, this is, I'm going to, I'm not going to just sit here and wait for somebody to say it's okay to do it. I'm going to do it. And so I actually got with Jay Dingman, who was formerly on the board, and said, all right, let's do something about it. And then Jacqueline Garman from Hidden Springs, she actually is a mental health professional. And so we've as well as being, part of Hidden Springs. I said, all right, let's start the process. Let's do something. So that's where all this began, and it was right, early March when it all started. And then of course COVID-19 hit, and it was like, now more than ever, we really need to, pay attention to this.
Yeah, the timing on it really seemed to sync up very, very well with what was going on, and all the additional. I'm a mildly anxious individual. Joel deals with different anxiety, but even for both of us during this time, and we've discussed it. Joel's level of anxiety actually dropped during this time because he was able to stay at home. I like interacting with people. My anxiety shot through the roof, and it's nice to see the state help out however they can. No, the Brewers Guild for
Yeah.
the state help out however they can. Sort of in this unprecedented time, your team and Josh Albashon is included have done a fantastic job of representing and helping out. I guess further clarify the way that the state laws have sort of been written out for all Florida breweries. As we come out of this interesting time, do you think we'll see some tightening up of some of the, or I maybe better stated as additional clarification where some of these misunderstandings were prior?
I think we're going to see.
And I'm sorry to use a specific example, so I don't just like cast out some wide net on you. Like delivery. When you're talking about breweries or even restaurants that are delivering for the time being, do you envision maybe some further clarification coming down through legislation or anything of that nature coming out of this, or is it going to be challenging to walk back some of this stuff?
I think there's definitely going to be an accounting of all things because, so since you mentioned delivery, I'll talk specifically with that one. What was interesting was immediately, of course, the question of, once we had, you could sell to go and you could sell, curbside and all that. People said, well, okay, well, what about delivery? Well, the issue with delivery is that it is explicitly forbidden in Florida statute. In fact, and this is where the irony comes in, that was written as part of the quote unquote growler law. And so when in 2015, when we, and everybody talks about the growler law as, it was just this one thing, but it actually was a comprehensive rewrite of a lot of alcohol statutes and things like that, which a lot of people don't realize. But one of the things in there, and it was it was kind of a trading bit, I guess. They said, okay, well, let's, we want to, make delivery directly from a brewery to consumer illegal. And at the time, everyone's like, well, why would I ever want to do that? So yeah, we'll concede that, and it actually gets written, that manufacturers of alcoholic beverages cannot deliver to consumers, and so there's no wiggle room there. I mean, it is blatantly illegal. However, then of course when was it? Well, such a state, they waived it. They didn't waive they waived parts of the law that weren't specific. Like those other states that are doing it don't have a law that says you specifically cannot do this. But that being said, that is one of those things I think that certainly will get a look in the next go around. I think shipping is one of those things that'll get a look at, not only at the state level but at the federal level.
Yeah, I imagine at the federal level, at least, we're going to see some discussion there from the Brewers Association. Just in general.
And they've already mentioned it. That it's definitely because it's one of those things. Like there's you can put in the safeguards required to make sure that underage people aren't getting it. It's really easy. They do, and you already have wine delivery, spirits delivery. Like these things are already in place with other services. There's no reason that it shouldn't be across the board. And also the same for beer, wine, spirits. Again, it's one of those, certain industries can and certain industries can't, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just because of whoever's lobbyists got there first. It's sort of how that happens. I think what's been really interesting though is that breweries fall into sort of an unspecified category depending on what the topic is. So, the ones that have a restaurant, whether they're officially a brew pub or they have a restaurant on site, obviously fall into those categories and are able to operate under those rules. They are also operating under a manufacturer's license. They're also operating under a retailer's license. They're also operating under a bar license in some cases. So, but there isn't one. And so when these executive orders come out about what can open and what can't and under what circumstances and rules, breweries don't get mentioned specifically. And so that's where things get confusing. And then what we've found is that the state doesn't like to drill too far down into getting too specific. And especially in this particular, instance, they really want businesses to be open. They're not in a position where they want to be telling people, we don't want your business to be open. They would rather have businesses be open than not, but they want to make sure that safety is also accounted for. And of course, that can certainly venture into, some political conversations as well about what's safe and what's not, and is it too early, is it not? That's, doesn't take a position on that. But our, what we want to do is we just want clarification. So when an executive order comes out and says, restaurants can open and then say, okay, well, where do breweries fall into this? If you say restaurants can open, but bars can't, or liquor stores can open, but where do we fall in that? And so we really work to get to get clarification directly from DBPR, from the top levels, because one of the frustrating parts is that you get before that clarification comes, you get regional enforcement officers having their own interpretation. So you might have an ABT agent in Fort Myers who says, yeah, go ahead, you guys are good to go, and somebody in Jacksonville saying, nope, absolutely not. And unless there's clarification, they're both right. So and that doesn't even take into account the regional guidelines and cities and municipalities set their own, they can make things as strict as they want. They just can't relax state law.
So is that how you all were able to get the clarification for food trucks to open up on a brewery grounds as a food vendor?
Yeah. So the conversation was of course, when they put out the order, it said it said food service associated with a brewery, and some people took that and they were like, well, it means that they have to be owned by the same people, and others said, well, no, it just means as long as they're on site, they can do it. And we really kind of pressed them, like, look, we really need clarification on this, and it took a while, but we finally got word from DBPR saying yes, a food truck on site will qualifies for and the head of DBPR sent out emails to city councils and chambers around the state who asked for it as well, saying the same thing. So there are some cities and municipalities who are a little stricter or they're like, no, we need something in writing from the state. Like, it's not going to happen. They're not going to write a statement for every single different kind of industry, because it just, they don't need to spend time, but it's, but it's been a long process, a long road to get. And, I'm sure whenever the next order comes out, there'll be more, clarification that's needed, and we will go at it as best we can when that comes out.
Now, I have a question about the guild going forward, but before I do that, I just want to jump real quick back to the mental health thing, because,
Sure.
As we're recording this, it's May 31st, the end, of Mental Health Awareness Month. Is the Mental Wellness Monday continuing going forward?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, not only that, you're going to be seeing more and actually, I was telling Phil this earlier. When Jillian came on board with the board of directors, she is really, really good at the whole social media game. And if you don't follow Levin Brewing on Instagram, you really should, because I
literally hit follow as we were talking back and forth.
And she does such a great job of, and they have since before they opened, she has done posts, and so like every time they do a post, it's day 1,224 of Levin Brewing, and it's it's a lot of their day-to-day stuff, and it's their some of it's really funny, and some of it's you're like, oh wow, and so she is actually putting together a schedule of cool stuff for the guild to be doing on social media. And as I was saying to you guys earlier, that with me trying to run all the social media for the guild, it's kind of like having your dad run it. I'm doing the best I can, but it's really not my forte. But she also gets it, and she's getting content from other breweries from around the state. And I think that's a big thing for me too, is getting participation from members. And so it's not just what I can get to and what I can get pictures of it. It's like getting these breweries that are really helping drive the industry in Florida, letting everybody else see what's happening around the state, because there's the brewery scene in South Florida is very different than the one in Pensacola, and there's really cool stuff and great beer happening at both. And so I think by sharing that through the guild, I think it creates a better community that's much more statewide than maybe it sometimes has been in the past.
And going forward, has annually, for the past couple of years, there's been the Florida Brewers Conference. Has there been any talk about are we planning on going ahead? Or has there been any announcement as far as what's happening with that?
So unfortunately, we've had to cancel July's conference because it was supposed to be mid-July, and there was just no way. There was no way to be sure that we'd even be able to, because we don't know what the state orders are going to be like. If you can have 400 people in a single place, mid-July, who knows if that'll even be allowed or not. But also, I think that realistically, it's going to be a tough sell to try to get people to spend the money, especially the people who we really want there, the brewers and brewery employees, to spend the money to be there when the past couple of months have been financially such a big hit for everyone. And by big hit, I don't mean like top of the charts. And then also, and the same goes with our vendors and our sponsors. It just, and then the flip side of that is, revenue wise, there's just no way that for the guild to make it financially feasible for it to work. So July has been canceled. What we're looking at is doing something by the end of the year, and whether it means it's something smaller, something maybe semi-virtual, but we'd like to do something that offers up some of the opportunities for education, for meeting up and getting together, and as much as I love all the education and learning part, the biggest part for me is the getting together and the camaraderie and just getting to spend time with each other outside of our places of business. And I know that's true for a lot of people. So hopefully we'll have something figured out, soon to have by the end of the year. But that's to be determined at this point.
Yeah. Go ahead, Phil.
No, go, Joel.
No, Sean started to go into that territory, so it almost didn't feel like we needed to ask the follow-up question. But I think we were both thinking that maybe there could be something digital along the lines of what CBC did this year.
Yeah, and that was definitely in my line of thought as well. That we have access to a lot of people who know a lot of stuff, and so it would not be a really tough thing to do to put together a handful of online seminars, to offer up something for people who want to learn, whether it's the financial side, whether it's the hard the hard science of the brewing side, to the sales, whatever it might be. We have enough brain trust between our membership to it's just a question of getting those things together.
As one of the things that I enjoyed, both as a board member in the past and as just a fan of Florida breweries, are your happy hour events. Any thoughts about moving some of those happy hour events to a virtual, so that maybe it's a virtual tour of a brewery and then a happy hour sort of with it? It takes that personal interaction piece out, as well as being able to sample some beer from that brewery, which is a big part of it, and definitely something that I looked forward to traveling around the state of Florida to do those with you guys. Any thoughts about bringing those back virtually, even temporarily?
So we're actually bringing
coming back live, I should say.
They are coming back live. In fact, on Tuesday we have one at Bug Nutty Brewing in their new facility in Cocoa. They have a full restaurant there as well. So they're actually they've been open, doing all the appropriate safety precautions and social distancing and whatnot. But it's this will be our first one since February, I think. Because March was the FBG Fest, and like days after FBG Fest, the whole world blew up. So
well aware.
Yeah. So this will be our on Tuesday in Cocoa at Bug Nutty, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I know it won't be 100% the same, because I can't run up and hug everyone like I want to. But just to see people face to face again, even if it's from 6 feet away and with a mask on, it'll be it'd be nice to at least take one step towards normalcy again. I like the idea of maybe even, and if I can figure out how to do it,
projection screen, just a projection screen with a camera for the rest of the audience.
Right, and just say, hey, here we are at Bug Nutty, and just if you want to virtually toast us, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to set a time for on Tuesday. All right, I'll figure out how to make that happen.
And just for clarification for anyone that's listening, Tuesday has already passed by the time this episode releases. It's the last Tuesday. But okay. While we're talking in the future, and partially in the past as well, right. Yeah, I think it would be awesome. You could do a Zoom call, and everyone could just change their name and put a hyphen with the brewery that they represent. And
I like that idea.
Maybe it's almost like wearing a name tag at the happy hours, which I always thought we probably should have worn name tags. Makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes we did back in the day, but
I think I brought name tags the first couple of times I did it, and then I just stopped. So
yeah,
but
awesome.
But I like that idea.
So Sean, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us, and being our guinea pig of sorts with our first interview.
My pleasure.
Please let everyone know where they can find you, the guild, online, all that good stuff.
So I'm you can find me pretty much everywhere, but I'm easy to find on Facebook. Just look at my name, Sean Nordquist. Also Florida Brewers Guild on Instagram and Twitter, and actually Twitter is FL Brewers Guild. Look up Florida Brewers Guild on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm also Beer for the Daddy, and that's But I'm really easy to find, so I don't hide very well.
Well, Sean, on behalf of United We Drink, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do for the state and all of our breweries in the state of Florida. It's truly appreciated.
Hey, it's good. Glad to be back with you guys. I as you know, I've been a fan since day one. Back in the old days.
Some rough episodes, and they got better when Joel came in replacement for me. But
I don't know about that.
That's some rough audio to re-listen to. Trust me.
But I also want to make sure I acknowledge that I was around back then. I listened to you guys, and I'm really proud of you guys and what you've done. Not just with the show, but also with all of you individually in your various paths. And I'm thrilled that we're all still friends, and I can't wait till we can all get together and have beer together.
I agree with you on that one.
You bet. We love you, Sean. Be safe.
Love you too, man.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Yes, it was no fun at all to not be a part of that conversation. It's also not fun to have shots fired at you for being close-minded. I'm very far from close-minded, Phil, and stay around after the episode to find out how I get my revenge. I want to thank Sean Nordquist, the executive director of the Florida Brewers Guild, good friend of ours, good friend of the show, for being on here once again. It was great to have him, and hopefully we can all get together sometime in the future and have beers in person. In the meantime, check out our social media. You can follow us at United We Drink on Twitter, at United We Drink Pod on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. We're on there as well. Our website's unitedwedrink.com. And as always, you can find this podcast on practically any of the major streaming services, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, any of those services where you can subscribe to the show and listen to it free of charge every other Thursday. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, rate and review the show. It takes a few seconds. We'd really appreciate it. You can also check out our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store, for shirts, buttons, stickers, and a whole bunch of other swag available to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another new episode here. Cheers.
Everything is better with Mike.
Damn right!